Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to give my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off tonight, we have Mercedes Moné defending the TBS title against Anna Jay. I thought it was a good match, man. Back and forth matchup between Anna Jay and Moné, with Moné keeping the pace of the match. Moné hits 3 amigos on Anna Jay in the middle of the ring. Moné then hits a Meteora on Anna for a near fall. Anna Jay then gets up, hits a blockbuster on Moné for a near fall. Anna Jay then applies a Queen Slayer, but the hold is broken. Moné then applies a Statement Maker, and that hold is broken as well. But Moné hits a Money Maker on Anna Jay, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match, and still TBS champion, is Mercedes Moné. Hats off to Mercedes Moné for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we have an FTR segment. Looks like FTR were home. FTR says that AEW needs a change, which I agree with. FTR then talks about the Death Riders. FTR say that they're not medically cleared until January. And then FTR say that they're not coming alone, which is some interesting stuff there from both Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler. Moving on from that, we have an MJF segment. MJF comes out to the ring. He mocks Adam Cole. Adam Cole then is shown on the Titantron. Adam then talks about World's End. Adam then is in the ring, and then Adam quickly attacks MJF, pretty much sending a message to MJF leading up to their match at World's End. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. Tag team matchup. It's Nick Wayne teaming up with Christian Cage, taking on Hook and Shibata. I thought it was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between both teams, with Hook and Shibata keeping the pace of the match. Cage then hits a kill switch on Shibata. Nick Wayne goes for the cover, pins for the 3. And your winners of the match are Nick Wayne and Christian Cage. Hats off to Nick Wayne and Christian Cage for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, it was announced that at World's End, it will be Mariah May defending her AEW Women's Championship against Thunder Rosa at World's End. Definitely looking forward to that matchup, and hopefully Thunder Rosa can beat Mariah May. Moving on from that, we have a Ricochet segment. Ricochet comes out to the ring. He's greeted by Tony Schiavone. Ricochet, he tries to talk about pretty much Will Ospreay, talks about, World's End, talks about, the Continental Classic Tournament, but he's interrupted by the Hurt Syndicate. Hurt Syndicate come out to the ring. Like I said, Ricochet was talking about the tournament and Ospreay. MVP then grabs the card, the business card that he gave to Ricochet. He takes the card and rips it up, and then Ricochet leaves the ring. Looks like Ricochet will not be working with the Hurt Syndicate. Speaking of the Hurt Syndicate, we go into our next match of the night, where it's a Continental Classic Tournament matchup where the Beast Mortos takes on Shelton Benjamin. Thought it was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Mortos and Benjamin, with Benjamin keeping the pace of the match. Mortos then hits a power slam on Benjamin for a near fall, but Shelton Benjamin hits the finish, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match, and the winner of 6 points in total in the Continental Classic Tournament, is Shelton Benjamin. Hats off to Shelton Benjamin for getting the win in this matchup. After that, Lashley attacks Mortos. Daniel Garcia is here. Mark Briscoe is here as well. Mark and Garcia then both attack the Hurt Syndicate, but the Hurt Syndicate fight them off. Moving on from that, we have Toni Storm sitting down with RJ. And it seems like Toni Storm is hitting the reset button on herself, where she pretty much, the way that I looked at it was that she was sitting down with RJ, and she pretty much was acting as if she just debuted for AEW. I think it plays into hand with the Timeless Toni Storm character, where it is going to be a kind of funny reset for Toni Storm, where she will come back. Obviously, she's back now as what she once was when she debuted for AEW, the rock star Toni Storm. And I think eventually we will see once again, coming out of retirement maybe, the Timeless Toni Storm character. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And I think what Toni Storm is doing is some fantastic stuff, and probably some of the best stuff in AEW. Moving on from that, we have another Continental Classic Tournament matchup. It's probably a match of the night for me. It's Will Ospreay taking on Darby Allin. I thought this was a great match, man. Back and forth matchup between Ospreay and Allin, with Ospreay keeping the pace of the match. Darby Allin then goes to the top rope, goes for a coffin drop, but missed and landed off the apron. It looked absolutely brutal. Darby then gets up, hits a stunner on Ospreay. Darby then goes for a code red, but Ospreay counters it with a hidden blade. Ospreay then goes for a stormbreaker, but Darby counters it with a code red. Ospreay and Darby both exchange in the middle of the ring, with Darby hitting a springboard coffin drop for a near fall. Ospreay then gets up, hits a Styles Clash off the apron on Darby Allin, landing to the outside. Ospreay then hits an Oz Cutter for a near fall on Darby Allin. And then Ospreay goes for a Stormbreaker, but Darby counters it with a Scorpion Death Drop. Darby goes to the top rope and hits 2 coffin drops on Ospreay, pins for the 3. And your winner of the match and now that has 6 points in the Continental Classic tournament is Darby Allin. Hats off to Darby Allin for getting the win in that matchup. Moving on from that, we go to the main event of AEW Dynamite last night. It is the Death Riders taking on Orange Cassidy, Adam Page, and Jay White. I thought it was a decent match, back and forth matchup between both teams with Orange Cassidy, Jay White, and Adam Page keeping the pace of the match. Jay tags himself in. Page walks away from the match, leaving Jay and Orange Cassidy alone. Claudio then attacks Orange Cassidy ringside. Page is back. Orange then hits an orange punch on Moxley, as well as a Stundog Billionaire. Page then hits a buckshot lariat. Jay then hits a Blade Runner. But John Moxley ultimately hits a roll-up, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match are the Death Riders. Hats off to the Death Riders for getting the win in this matchup. A couple things I want to talk about, man, when it pertains to AEW Dynamite before I get the hell up out of here. Number one, was it a good show? It wasn't a bad show, man, to be honest with you. And to be honest with you, the arena, I think they were in Washington, D.C. last night, and it looked like it was a smaller arena, or at least how they set it up. It looked a lot smaller. I'm all for that. I think, the fans were definitely engaging throughout the entire night, which was great. The sound of the arena throughout the matches sounded great. I think this is, and I mentioned this, a couple months ago when it was announced that AEW was going to go to smaller arenas, hence the Hammerstein Ballroom. I think it's a great thing for AEW. I don't think, obviously AEW is having a hard time selling tickets and, pay-per-view buys and stuff like this. Going to smaller venues, 9 times out of 10, or at least 9 times out of 10, AEW should possibly sell out these smaller arenas like the Hammerstein Ballroom and other venues that are a lot smaller than these arenas that they've been going to the past couple years. They should be able to sell out. The Hammerstein Ballroom, they can go to the 2300 Arena in Philly. Those are the kind of arenas that AEW kind of needs to focus on moving forward into 2025 because they're not selling out these arenas. They're just not. The numbers, if you're comparing the numbers from WWE to AEW right now is not reaching even close to what WWE is doing as far as ticket price sales are going for them compared to AEW. WWE is selling arenas out week in and week out where AEW is not. So going to smaller arenas, like I mentioned earlier, whether it's the Hammerstein Ballroom or the 2300 Arena in Philly, it's beneficial for not only the fans, but as well as AEW. For crowd noise, smaller venues, that's what they need to get back to. And this was something that I mentioned a lot of times about AEW, where they need to go back to what brought them to the dance. When AEW came into the fold and actually became a company, it still gave off that independent vibe with TV programming allowing the TV programming to show these talents on, national, syndicated television. They need to go back to that. They need to go back to what brought them to the dance. And the other thing that I'll also say that was very interesting about AEW last night is that they played a little vignette, if you will, of Kenny Omega, possibly on his way back to AEW. I know that Kenny Omega has a match coming up here soon for Wrestle Dynasty where he's taking on Gabe Kidd for New Japan Dynasty. Kenny Omega would be great to have him come back into the fold of AEW. At this point of what AEW is doing, especially going into 2025, and I know, Tony Khan mentioned something about them going into a new era. Honestly, I think the new era, for me, in my honest opinion, is the deal that AEW has with HBO Max. They were talking about Fight for the Fallen last night as well, especially when it pertained to FTR. And that will be simulcast between TBS and HBO Max. And I believe it's Fight for the Fallen. That will be the first event, if you will, on HBO Max. So, seeing Kenny Omega come back, and obviously I get why they're doing it, because obviously WWE and Monday Night Raw are going over to Netflix January 6th, and it's going to be an outstanding, crazy show. I think Jamie Hayter also wants to have a match with Julia Hart on the show for Fight for the Fallen. So, obviously, the AEW is going to start building up towards, the AEW Max debut, if you will. But obviously the new era needs to come with a hard reset. They need to go back to what brought them to the dance. And, I mentioned this multiple times with AEW. They need help desperately with creative, with storylines and strong build leading up to these matches, man. We don't need 12 pay-per-view matches on a pay-per-view or PLE that mean absolutely jack shit. We don't need that. We need captivating storylines leading up to these matches where the fans can actually sink their teeth into and actually get invested in the storyline, which gets them more excited about the final product, which will be the match that we're getting from that per storyline. We're not getting that. You know what I mean? Right now, you're getting the best at what you can get right now with AEW, and hopefully it changes drastically going into 2025, and hopefully it will. Because they need to do something, man, because the shit they're doing now is not working. With that being said, do I think AEW Dynamite show was bad last night? No, I think Will Ospreay and Darby Allin absolutely just destroyed AEW Dynamite last night. I thought the match was great. I was surprised with the outcome of Darby Allin getting the win over Will Ospreay. But, then again, in my defense, I also said that Darby Allin should have been AEW World Champion. You know what I mean? And I've gone back to the whole, Wrestle Dream event, all that other stuff, and I've said it multiple times about Darby Allin. Darby Allin should be the guy that's carrying this company on his back. And right now, currently, he's not. Jon Moxley is. And I mentioned this last week or past couple of weeks about Jon Moxley and this whole Death Rider situation. The storyline's going nowhere. It's run its course, it's run flat. And yeah, they obviously there's a fatal 4-way at World's End where Jon Moxley will defend the AEW World Championship for the first time since he's won it at, Wrestle Dream. But, the storyline, it's run its course. I think at this point, no one really genuinely gives a shit about the storyline or whatever storyline they were trying to have with Jon Moxley. And like I mentioned earlier with Kenny Omega, some of these players need to come back into the play, man. Whether it's Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, something needs to change for AEW. And they need to go back to what brought them to the dance. And hopefully 2025, that will be the hard reset button that AEW needs. Because, like I said, man, you've got talent that's leaving AEW. And you already had talent that was, a real big deal for AEW at one point. Cody, Jade, CM Punk. They're all over in WWE right now doing great things. You look at Cody Rhodes, he's a Universal Champion. CM Punk's going to get ready to go into a storyline with Seth Rollins and have a matchup with Rollins on the January 6th debut Raw episode of Netflix, when Raw debuts on Netflix. So they're all doing great shit over there in WWE. Penta, there was a vignette that was played for Monday Night Raw with a big, zero with a line in the middle of it. A lot of people are saying that that's going to be Penta making his debut, hopefully probably soon, if not January 6th, for Monday Night Raw. Yeah. Absolutely. And I mentioned this multiple times when it pertains to the Lucha Bros, Penta and Phoenix. There is no tag team division right now for AEW. The tag team division for AEW is abysmal, man. It's not there. It's not. You got to go back to what the tag team division once was for AEW. It was insane. Absolutely insane. You had Matt, you had the Hardy Boys. You had Santana Ortiz, a part of, Inner Circle. You had FTR. Even at that time, they were back in the day, they were part of Pinnacle with MJF and Wardlow. You got Taven and Bennett. You know what I mean? I think at one time you had the Grizzled Young Veterans. Where the hell are they at? You know what I mean? Like, there's no tag team division for AEW right now, so I don't blame Penta and Phoenix for wanting to leave, especially with the treatment that Phoenix has been getting since all the shit's been going on with him and Tony Khan. So, and obviously there's, the problem, the other issue with AEW is that, the backstage shit and all this other shit that's been coming out, it's just making the company look bad. Really. It's really making the company look bad. And I'm one of the people that don't want this company to fail. I don't want AEW to fail. I want AEW to succeed. I love the fact that they're part of TNT and TBS. I was a huge WCW fan growing up, and the fact that we see wrestling once again on, Turner Networks, TBS or TNT, I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. It pays a little homage or nostalgia, if you will, for those guys and girls that grew up watching WCW. Yeah, it's awesome. You know what I mean? But, again, the product right now is just not what it once was 3 years ago. And, yeah, I get things do change. I get it. But the changes that they have made have been nothing but the worst for this company. It's not benefiting the company at all. Ticket sales are in the toilet. Attendance is not there. TV ratings are severely down. It's not needed. It's really not. But like I said, I'll give AEW the benefit of the doubt. I think them going to smaller arenas, like I mentioned earlier with the 2300 arena or the Hammerstein Ballroom, I think those kind of arenas, those kind of venues, is going to benefit AEW immensely. Absolutely. From the crowd noise to ticket sales. AEW should be able to sell out those kind of arenas or venues moving forward in 2025 with not a problem, no issue. To be honest. The bigger venues, I can understand it, like the Staples Center and stuff like that, or the T-Mobile Arena. It might be a lot more harder for them to sell out an arena like that. You know what I mean? But then again, you look at All In at the Texas Ranger Stadium, and, tickets are, they're selling decent tickets for this event. So, again, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, Tony Khan is known for Mr. Pay-Per-View. I will give the guy that. Usually his pay-per-views are outstanding. But the weekly episodic television, it's not his strong suit. It's just not. And then again, I don't have the creative pin for this company. I'm sure it's probably rough. And I've told many people that Tony Khan has a lot of shit on his plate. You run an AEW, you run a Ring of Honor. It's kind of hard to balance that out. So, Tony Khan has to give someone some trust enough to help him run Ring of Honor or help him with creative. Because right now the creative for AEW is just in the goddamn toilet. And they need that so bad to get them back to the dance. I'm telling you, man, I think I generally, I will say this and I will stay on this hill by myself. If AEW, and I mean this cold-heartedly, if AEW went back to writing compelling storylines for these wrestlers and for these matches, there'd be no issue. That's the main issue that people have with AEW, is that there is no creative for this company. There's no, strong storylines that lead you into a pay-per-view match. You can't get invested emotionally with these matches because there's no storyline backing this up for the match that we're going to have at World's End or any other pay-per-view coming down the pike. We need compelling storylines creatively to get the fans invested in these goddamn matches. And if AEW and Tony Khan and his entire team over there in AEW can do that and figure that out, AEW will be back to what it once was the first 2-3 years of AEW's existence. You know what I mean? And it's not like AEW does not have the talent, man. They have probably the best wrestler on the planet right now with Will Ospreay. You got Ospreay, you have Okada, you got Moxley, Darby Allin, you had Bryan Danielson. Like, you have the talent, Adam Page. You got the talent to build and to have compelling storylines. MJF, you know what I mean? Like, it's not hard to comprehend, man. It's not. And that's one thing where I feel like at sometimes AEW, or specifically Tony Khan, they tend to self-sabotage themselves because they don't, this whole company was, we're for the fans. We want to hear the fans out. We want to listen to the fans. What happened with that? Because the fans have been screaming to the rooftops saying, like, hey, we need creative, man. We need storylines. They've been saying it now for the past, 2 years. We need something compelling, something that the fans can get invested in week in and week out leading up to these PLEs. And no offense, WWE is doing that. They're getting you invested. They're getting invested with storylines. Oh, shit, I can't wait till next week. That's what we need for AEW. If they want to stay in competition with WWE, we need great storylines. That's what we need. I'm not saying that AEW is ever going to take over WWE. No. But can they compete if they do things correctly and do things right and knock off the bullshit? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, there's a lot of free agents that are going to be available come January. Josh Alexander, he's going to be a free agent. Obviously, he's going to be testing the free agent market, whether it's WWE, staying with TNA, or possibly go over to AEW or New Japan. Josh Alexander has mentioned that he wants matches with people over in WWE. He's mentioned that he wants matches with people in AEW. Kenny Omega, stuff like that. Darby Allin. He's mentioned that. He's also mentioned working in Japan. So, I mean, again, there's, 2025 for January is going to be insane. And they're, I mean, the first week of January is going to be absolutely insane just with the Raw debut episode of Netflix. Then we also have AEW first ever simulcast with, TBS and HBO Max with Fight for the Fallen. So, 2025 should be a really, really big year for professional wrestling. And I'm all for it. I'm locked in, man. But AEW needs to go back to what brought them to the dance. Something. You know what I mean? To get the fans invested once again in this product. Because if not, man, the future's not looking so bright for AEW right now if they continue to keep doing what they're doing. I know they signed their TV deal and all this other stuff, but if they keep losing more fans and less people start buying these PLEs or pay-per-views, this company is going to be hurting a lot worse than what it currently is right now. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going to be pointing the finger at Tony Khan. You know what I mean? He's the boss. He runs AEW. You can't say that this company's for the fans when, like I said, a lot of fans have been saying the same shit for 2 years where we need creative storylines. Compelling storylines to get the fans invested in your product and in these matches that lead up to these pay-per-views. That's all we need. That's all we need. As fans, that's all we want. Compelling, creative storylines. And if AEW can do that, then I think AEW will have one hell of a 2025, next year. Absolutely. But we had to get back to that first. Compelling, creative storylines. And if AEW can do that, then they'll have more ticket sales, more pay-per-view buys, and things will be a lot more brighter over in AEW rather than what it's been like for the past 2 years for AEW. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. Be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.